Hello, Collateral Gaming listeners. Chazzle Dazzle here from the Trial by Air Variety Show podcast. I just wanted to take a few seconds to invite you guys over to what we do. No, it's not video games, but we do invite really awesome and unique bands from all over the world. We dig deep into their souls and find really cool stories to tell you, and there's tons of music every week, so subscribe to us wherever you subscribe to your podcast. We look forward to having you.
I'm Ashley Chancellor.
And I'm Megan Gomez.
This is Collateral Gaming. Happy Halloween and welcome to Collateral Gaming, the only video game podcast that matters, where we focus on good games, bad games, and everything else in between in the world of gaming. We are podcasting straight from somewhere in South Texas, and yes, my friends, we are a 420 friendly podcast, so whatever you have, smoke it if you've got it. And I know we're missing the deadline by a little bit. Okay, it's a little bit late to say happy Halloween, but you know what? We got some personal stuff that we had to deal with, and
yeah, it was an interesting Halloween in the week following. So happy Halloween, guys. We're sorry that's a little bit late.
Yeah, it's all good because we're here now, and we're gonna talk about a horror game. But before we get into that, how was your Halloween, Megan?
It was really good. Just hung out with the hubby and the family. Cooked some burgers with a couple friends. Nothing too crazy. Obviously, because you know it's a pandemic, and we don't have any kids or any dogs because we used to take the dogs trick or treating, and we'd see if anybody had dog treats. But right now we just have the cat, and the cat doesn't exactly like to go outside, so we just went out and grilled out. What about you, Ash?
For me, you know, it was my daughter's first Halloween that she would be fully conscious, you know, during the holiday. So it would have been nice to be able to trick or treat with her, but like we said, it's a very special year. It's COVID going on, so we decided to play it safe. But I was spending time with family, had a little Halloween party at my parents' place, and we enjoyed each other's company. And even though she didn't get to trick or treat and have candy, she did get plenty of sweets, so it was nice.
There you go.
And I think actually Zach and I were going to try to record that night, but our Halloween bonus round episode, but we ended up doing that, I think, the day after. If you haven't checked that out, go check that out now, because we did get to talk about some of our favorite horror game moments, as well as get into Resident Evil 7.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. That one's got some spoopy ass shit in there.
I wanted to do it actually. After playing it, I was like, man, I should have chosen this for the horror game. But I haven't played too many horror games. I will admit, I'm kind of getting into the genre now. We had a few that we had talked about, you know, that we put in our list, right? And Until Dawn was one of the ones that you had suggested, I believe.
Yeah, I actually, it was between this and Amnesia, just because it's a freaking classic, but also none of us really have, you know, the capacity to play that on any of our systems right now, because all of our shit's overloaded. So I was like, you know what, let's do a console game, let's do Until Dawn, and, you know, it's a good one. It's one it's unexpected, kind of, I would say.
Yeah, it really is, and it may not be the first horror game that you think of, but I think it's an interesting one, and the entire thing is set up like a horror slasher movie, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And we'll have, you know, every season to talk about more horror games. We did PT last season, which is one of my favorite games of all time. Really sad that we never got to see Silent Hills in its full glory.
Yeah, I don't know if I would play that one. Silent Hill is definitely, I don't know if it's just because it triggers childhood memories, but, I am fucking terrified of anything related with Silent Hill. Fucking terrified. I'm like, nope, no way, no ma'am, I'm out, bye.
Okay. Well, what's your what's your favorite horror game?
Ooh, you know, that's a really good question. I would say Until Dawn is up there. Dead Space is a really big one for me. I don't know if that one would be considered horror, as more of like a slasher kind of thing. If you're I don't know if it's considered, but the Friday the 13th game where you get to play as
Oh.
one of the kids or Jason or not Jason. Jason, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I
Jason.
literally scared myself. Um, you can like choose to play like not choose, but it's kind of like Among Us where you're like one of the kids or you're Jason. That one's really fucking fun. It's scary when like your friend is running after you. So I don't know. That one's like more of like a team play kind of thing. But I love that game so much.
I saw that and I was really interested in it. It's something that I want to pick up at some point because with Collateral Cinema, I've been exposing myself also to a lot of horror movies, including the Friday the 13th series and Nightmare on Elm Street and Halloween. Robert and Bo are huge horror junkies, so that was definitely something that stood out to me. Maybe next season we'll do that. I know Zach was talking about I think it was Outlast was the one that Zach was.
Oh fuck, that's one. I was trying to think of the name. Fuck that game. But I literally cried like a little bitch in a corner for like 2 hours because he just comes up and fucking grabs you, and I was not expecting it. Like it was calm, and I was like, it's too calm. And then this motherfucker that's huge with his face all burnt just grabs you out of no. I literally was like crying, and I was like, no, I can't do this right now. Like I'm gonna have a heart attack. I think I was like 19 at the time. I was like, I'm gonna have a heart attack, guys.
Oh my goodness.
It was bad. Like I was terrified. It was like when the game first came out and I was like
Yeah, no, there are definitely some horrifying moments. PT is one of those games for me that just really, really, really gets me. Resident Evil 7, same thing. I mean, I found it difficult to even progress in the game because, I kind of had this feeling like I was always being hunted. And
Oh, Blair Witch too. Blair Witch
Blair
is a
Witch.
pretty scary one. I played that one for the first time
There's a Blair Witch
last year.
game.
Yeah, it's based off of the movie. Like you have the camcorder and stuff, and you have to like rewind, and you've got the dog, and it's fucking terrifying. Like I don't play very many horror games. Like I will warn you guys now. Like even just like anything having to do with the paranormal, I'm kind of sketchy of just because I've had some very very strange and bad experiences. So like when it comes to like spooky stuff, I'm like, I'll play it, but if it gets too spooky, I'm out. Later, I'm gonna go play some Final Fantasy and pretend that never happened.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
Yeah, literally, I don't play Final Fantasy that much, but I will literally go and play, what is it, 17? Where you're playing as what's his name? Yeah, 17. I will go pick that up.
Yeah.
And ride around in the car and drive around and just take pictures and shit. I'm like, no, I need to clear my brain of what the fuck just happened.
If you ever play PT on VR, oh my god, I couldn't even do it. Like I had to take the headset off. Like any horror game in VR is just insurmountable. I don't know how we would
I'm
do
good.
it.
I'm litty titties on that. I'm good.
Until Dawn also is a pretty scary game at parts. Most of it is just kind of tense.
It's more of a jump scares. Yeah, it's very tense. Like you feel something's eyes on you, and then it just fucking jumps at you, and you're like, God damn it! Like now that I've been exposed to scarier games like Outlast, I'm a little bit better. But this game, like when I very first played it, I was like, what the fuck?
There are a couple moments that made me jump, and one of those actually made it into my top 5 jump scares in gaming list on our bonus round episode we just did, and I'll probably bring that up in a little bit. But I guess to kind of get into the game that we're going to talk about today, Until Dawn, we'll start with, as we usually do, kind of the development history.
Yep.
And this game is actually developed by Supermassive Games, and is actually kind of a surprising move from them because they're not known for this type of game, or at least, up to this point. And this came out in 2014? 2015.
I have the case in front of me. Hold on. Yes, 15.
2015.
Yes.
Yeah. So
the...
about 5 years ago, Supermassive Games is a British company based in Surrey.
It's Basel, not Basel. Get it right.
Yeah, but all the actors in this are American, which is pretty interesting, I suppose, and the writers are American.
Yeah, it stars. I know the two ones that I remember probably from childhood, and then also not iRobot. I Am Robot.
Hayden Panettiere.
Hayden Panettiere and Rami Malek.
And Rami Malek from well, he's done a lot of shit, but I remember him most recently in the Queen movie, Bohemian Rhapsody. They're both great actors.
Rami Malek is one of my favorites. Love him to death. I have watched so much content of him. He's a great dude.
Rami Malek is great. Rami Malek and Hayden Panettiere. Like I said, I honestly Hayden Panettiere, and all I can think of is Save the Cheerleaders, Save the World. But she kind of brings that vibe into his, which, and we'll talk about the performances to it a little bit. But Supermassive Game is actually, most of their titles are, PlayStation exclusives.
Yeah.
And this game is not an exception to that. However, more recently, they've started working on the Dark Pictures Anthology, which is a multi-platform game, and they're partnered with Bandai Namco on that.
Love Bandai Namco.
Bandai Namco. I mean, yeah, they're mostly they're behind a lot of. I know they did the Naruto Storm series. Most of the Naruto games, like pretty much any major like anime game, is going to be by Bandai Namco. But yeah, no, they're working together on that, which is pretty interesting. I haven't actually even heard of that, so I'd have to go check that out sometimes. What they were known for prior to Until Dawn was actually they've been involved in a lot of the Little Big Planet DLC and spinoffs.
Yes, that's a really good game. I love those. Those are so fun.
I wanted to talk about it at some point. Lillian, my wife, had expressed interest in being on an episode of Little Big Planet, so that'll definitely come up at some point.
That will be great because we can finally have another female voice on the podcast. Sometimes I feel like I have to talk like a bro because I'm like, yeah, man, it's just me and the bros. We're talking on the fucking podcast, man.
Talking on the podcast. So, some other things that Supermassive Games have been behind is the Start the Party series, Doctor Who: The Eternity Clock, which is the game I've played. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, and actually I really enjoyed that game. I thought it was really, really cool, and it surprised me to hear that the same studio that is behind this game did that. I mean, they're just wildly different games. They did the HD remake or remaster of Killzone.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. Killzone is the one that I remember notably from them.
Yeah. And then also Hidden Agenda, which I think is more similar to this game, kind of more of that horror slasher feel, but I think came out more recently. And then Sony Computer Entertainment, now known as Sony Interactive Entertainment, was the publisher behind this, and which is per usual for any first party game. Any game that's developed exclusively for PlayStation is going to be published by Sony. And
Sony's got to have their hand in the cookie jar on that.
yes, yeah, exactly. And contrast that with Mass Effect, which I played, which Microsoft Game Studios was behind, at least the first one. So
yes,
and that was originally only came out on the 360. So
you betcha, sweet Bippy, it did. Believe me, I know them facts, honey.
Yeah, and we had a great time talking about Mass Effect. So if you guys want to go check out that bonus round episode, that's out.
Yeah, that one came first. Sorry, guys. I had to celebrate N7 Day and kick it off with style because I got dropped a bomb and I was so excited. I was like, Ash, I know we got to record this Halloween episode and we're overdue, but like, bro, it's N7 Day. Like, come on, man. He's like, all right, whatever. Just let's fucking do it.
It's N7, so yeah, no, we had to do that. But I'm glad that we're talking about this now, finally getting this out of the way. One thing that's interesting about Until Dawn is it was written by a pair of American horror writers, Larry Fessenden and Graham Resnick. And let me see if I can pull up stuff that they've been involved in. At least Fessenden was involved in movies such as writer/directorial credits, No Telling, Habit, Wendigo.
Oh, Wendigo! No, that's
2001, which is interesting because this game is about Wendigos.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just every time I think Wendigo, I just think of Supernatural, the first season.
Oh,
and Corey Monteith getting snatched up by a Wendigo.
I think the same thing actually. That reminds me of Supernatural because that was like the second episode or third episode.
It was the third one, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and then The Last Winter. He also has an impressive amount of acting credits, and he has directed some TV stuff. See, anthology horror comedy film, The ABCs of Death 2. That's pretty interesting. So this guy's involved in the horror industry, and I believe Resnick was as well. And so from a perspective of development by a British company, it is interesting that we've involved some writers. And originally that was the idea, was to make this game feel like a horror movie or like a slasher movie.
Yeah.
And in fact, this game was originally conceived as a title exclusive to the PlayStation Move.
Which kind of, I felt like that thing flopped really bad. I don't know about you. I never saw the reason to get it. I don't know about you, Ash, but me personally, I don't know how it ends up. I bought my Xbox after it came out, and I still ended up getting a first generation. Like, I always get the first generation of everything, and that's just how it ends up for me. And like, I had already bought the PlayStation. I got it, like, someone had literally traded it into GameStop. I was just shopping around GameStop, and, um, someone was with me and they bought it for me and I was like, "Oh my god." And then I was like, "Well, I'm not going to go spend money on a PS Move. Like, I don't need that." But I know that this was originally supposed to be kind of like in Last of Us, where you can have, like, you shake the controller. I know, like, you would do different things to interact with different characters. So, like, when they pick up a lamp or things like that, it was supposed to be more interactive to get people to get off their asses, I guess, and for us to fall on the floor whenever there's freaking horror scenes.
Yeah, and I will say that a lot of those elements still shine through in the game. Now, obviously, the game is on the PS4 instead of the PS3, and it doesn't use the PlayStation Move accessory, but they did make use of the motion controls on
Yeah.
the DualShock controller. Or what did they call the PS4 controller? I know it's the DualShock 4, but it's also called something else.
Yeah. Let me look it up.
But while you're looking that up, one other interesting thing is that apparently this was intended for a younger audience. I don't know if how they were going to do a horror slasher film vibe and make it for a younger audience, but that's what they were going for, and that was why we had the motion controls. It was supposed to have a much bigger emphasis on narrative than Supermassive's previous games, and originally was supposed to be first person.
Actually, it's just DualShock 3 and DualShock 4. The newest one is going to be the DualSense, which is
I
interesting.
know that. Yeah, I know that the new one's called the DualSense. I want to say though the DualShock 4 did have, I mean that's its main name, but I want to say it was also called something else, or maybe it was the DualShock 3, but that's neither here nor there. That I don't think it matters.
That's in the past.
So the other thing I wanted to mention also was that there actually was a lot of positive reception to this title early on, even in its early development stages where it was a PS3 Move title. It was kind of this alpha gameplay that was shown, and aside from the criticism towards making the PlayStation Move controls like an exclusive way to navigate the game, there was a lot of hope and hype for this game. So, and I guess because of the long development time, that hype only increased.
Yeah. Something that's also interesting that I actually didn't know until I was checking out, like, we have obviously points, guys. Like, there's no way we're going to be able to just talk this off without a list. Just saying. This was actually used, it was created in the Decima engine, which was made by Guerrilla Games.
Yes, I thought you would like that.
Yes, also the people that created Horizon Zero Dawn, which is interesting because I didn't until now, like, I can actually understand the gameplay because kind of tying into Horizon a little bit because I kind of want to bring up the engine for this. Even just the stumbles and falls that these characters have is actually realistic. It's not just like they fall flat on their side or whatever. They actually stumble and they'll fall and they'll roll and things like that, which is really cool that Guerrilla Games is able to create an engine like that with the budget that they had. From what I understand, it was not a big budget at the beginning, as most developers have. So that's something cool.
Yeah.
I also just getting into how we're talking about all of the mocap and getting into, we're kind of coming into this chunk of actual
Gameplay.
controls and gameplay. I actually kind of enjoyed a little bit of static camera movement that we had there in this one. I don't know about you, Ash.
It's like the early Resident Evil games, right?
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of like old school horror games like Resident Evil and things like that, where it was just kind of like, okay, like this is kind of only the view we get. I feel like this is for a reason. Like there felt like there was a reason behind their camera angling, which is kind of interesting for a game like this.
Yeah, kind of almost like God of War as well.
Yeah.
And piggybacking on what you said about the Decim engine, is that decision was actually made at the same time that the entire development shifted for this game. So while they were experimenting with the debug camera is when they had actually decided to go in and use a third person perspective for a more quote unquote cinematic experience. And I guess since they were going for the feel of a horror slash slasher yeah, I said that right.
Yeah.
Movie. I guess I understand why that decision was made. It's also when they decided to go ahead and move the game to the PS4, and whenever the story became a more mature plot. When
Yeah.
and also at that time, all of the characters, or most of them, ended up being recast. And as far as we can tell, the reason that decision was made was to use better known actors like Hayden Panettiere and Rami Malek.
Yeah. Also, I did kind of want to tie into that. It also makes it, a little bit more intriguing for people that are wanting to buy the console. Also, I really do like the fact that it is more cinematic, because if you think about like PlayStation exclusives, like you always think like it's this raw cinematic experience, like you're delved into it. And that's always just how PlayStation exclusives are, and I will always credit PlayStation for that. I, of course, as you know, I'm sure everybody knows because I talk about it all the time, the Gears series, the Xbox exclusive, is phenomenal, fantastic. That shit will jerk you into like hugging your knees and like rocking back and forth, kind of crying. There's some amazing Xbox exclusives, but PlayStation is really known for its one person kind of story titles. So I really like that they came out with one that was more in the horror scene, because if you think about PlayStation, they're more of like RPGs and like these amazing like characters that have these hero archetypes. So it was cool to see something that they're like, hey, we're gonna bring this in with the new PlayStation. It's gonna be more cinematic, more horror slasher. I was like, I don't really like slasher, but I'm into it. Let's try it. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Like, I literally bought the game and I was like, screw it, I'm gonna do it.
I've never been a huge fan of it either. That stuff has always kind of freaked me out. But like I said, I'm being more and more exposed, and there is a lot of fun to be had in the horror slasher genre. But the big takeaway here with Until Dawn, more so than that, was the idea of the butterfly effect system. And that's something we'll also
Yes.
get into in a little bit. But as far as development goes, they actually had to create a software that would record every player choice that was made. Almost like a
Yep.
series of nodes. And what was also cool was that, as far as rewrites go, they generally tried to avoid that, because
Mhm.
if you rewrite one aspect, then every subsequent event that depends on that has to be rewritten as well. So what we have
Yes.
here is likely a lot of what the story was from the very beginning. And a lot of that I've heard was, as far as the way that player choices affected the story, was inspired by Heavy Rain.
Oh God, that is Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls. I know we've talked about them a few times here before as a reference, because there's a lot of games were inspired by them to do this kind of like butterfly effect choices, and this game was no different. And it really, it at first when you think about it, it's not really kind of like in the same, I want to say like type, obviously because it's a horror slasher, but once you get into it a little bit more, you can kind of sense, the Heavy Rain inspiration. You do one little thing. It's like I said in Mass Effect, but it's a little bit different. This one is more of a butterfly. That one's more like action and consequence kind of thing. But you do one small thing, you could end up killing a character off. Someone hits their head, that ends up killing them later on because they get dizzy or something like that. Like, you have to think of survival. So it's very different. And in Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls, it's no different. You can choose to save yourself in Beyond Two Souls and go with Aiden. And that's the cool thing about this game is, like, even if you have somebody that made a similar choice to you, you're not all going to come out with the same ending.
Right. Yeah, there's so many choices to be made, and every choice is permanent. There is a
Yes.
strict auto system that's put in place, and it's not necessarily intended to punish the player, but the developers felt that it was necessary, so that you actually, there's weight to your choices, and it even
Yes.
extends beyond your choices. If you fail a quick time event sequence and a character dies, I mean, you fucked up. The rest of the game, you're gonna have to play through the rest of the game or start the entire thing over. You're not gonna be able to load back, and that's a consequence that I myself had to deal with.
Yes.
A character dies, the story doesn't end there.
Yeah, no, it continues on, and as my first playthrough, I think I came out with, I think, 2 survivors. I think it was Hayden and Rami, to be honest with you.
Was it?
Yeah, and I can't even I always just call them Hayden and Rami, even though I know their friggin' names, but I'm like, oh, it's Hayden Panettiere, it's Rami Malek. Like, I remember, like, as you go through the game, like, you just watch your friends die off, or like you can like see from another perspective how someone dies, because it like ties into each other on a time sequence, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh fuck. You're like, damn it.
And that affects the game later on. They'll reference those characters' deaths. So it's something that's supposed to carry weight into the narrative. And this might have been a risk as a design choice, but it ultimately enhances the horror elements. I mean, you really
Yeah.
feel like I can't let this character die or they're gonna be dead, you know? And there's even
Yeah.
kind of a similar pacing to that as we see in games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill.
Yes, very, very similar. Even Outlast, like you feel like, you have to get through this point, or this big fucking burly motherfucker that's naked except for a apron is chasing after you. Like you're fucking terrified and you have to get out of that. You have to find your batteries and shit. Like there's
Yes.
there's a pacing that happens in horror games that it's necessary to do this thing or you're fucked. Completely fucked and you don't want to see the brutal death.
It builds up the suspense, and that pacing is awesome here because deaths don't happen very early on. In fact, I think the first character that can die is Jessica, and the only character that died at my playthrough. So you're just kind of building up to this, and there's some jump scares and there's some tense situations, but it's not until a big portion of the game that characters actually start dying. And so there's always that sense of dread and actually terror was what they mostly wanted to focus on here. There was obviously they had to decide the right proportions of horror and terror and disgust, but terror, which is what is defined here as the dread of an unseen threat, it was really the focus. And so in order to invoke fear in the players and to really increase that sense of terror, they actually ended up during development with their play testers, they used a galvanic skin response test to measure the fear.
Oh, that's that weird, like creepy, like sweat test thing, right? Where it like tests like all of your responses. Oh God, no wonder.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then playing into that further, we obviously had to have an awesome soundtrack that was going to that was going to increase terror, and increase your sense of fear. And so, and that was composed by Jason Graves, and it's described as reactive, meaning that as you're approaching a threat, whereas the player character does, the music's going to get louder.
Yeah, it's not just like, your typical game where, you get into an enemy area, like in Zelda, like when you get into Gerudo Field and you get or a Gerudo Field, Hyrule Field. God, even yesterday with Mass Effect, guys, I keep switching names because we've been talking about so many games recently. Like Ash and I will go off on a tangent before we record and talk about like 10 freaking games. So I'm sorry that I cannot remember anything, but going into what I was talking about, if you get into, the field of an enemy, it starts playing like battle music.
Yeah.
And this, it's just like, it's quiet and, it's kind of like slow and it's almost like, like slow orchestra type. And then it just builds up and you're like, okay, something might happen. Like, what the fuck? And then all of a sudden it's just da-da-da-da-da, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna fucking die if I don't make some choices right the fuck now. Like, it's very reactive to you. It's not, and that's kind of what makes this game unique to other horror games, is like, other horror games, it's just gonna, your playthrough, your storyline is gonna have a set point for your sound.
Yeah.
For this game, it's whenever you go through different parts of the map, like, I wouldn't say map, but more like different parts of the story and through different parts with characters. If you begin to encounter a threat, the music just all of a sudden is like, hey, and you're like, oh shit, okay. And it's like really like ominous and vague type music until you just all of a sudden see there's a fucking Wendigo in your face and you're like, oh my God, okay, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and I liked how they even used some film music editing techniques with the Decima engine, even programming the how the music would be layered depending on players' choices.
Yes, and this soundtrack is kind of like catastrophically beautiful. Like it has very, very like I said, like orchestra, like classical type moments in it, which is kind of, different for, a horror game especially, but also for like a cinematic type game. Of course, when you think like orchestra, you're gonna think, of course, Final Fantasy, they always use an orchestra, but like this is something completely all in itself, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. What did you think about the music overall?
Like I said, I thought it was like catastrophically beautiful. And I really, really loved how, like even the music, from what I understand, can like change depending on your choice.
Yeah.
Because I remember, like, my friend played through one part and she's like, man, the music was, like, really sad. And I was like, what? Like, I had happy music because, like, they fucking saved each other. Like, what do you mean? Like, it changes depending on your butterfly choice is what I call them. It's just, like, I choose, say, like, butterfly choice because you can see in the top left of the screen there's, like, butterfly wings that start flapping. And you can't really see it unless you're paying attention to it, which really fucks you up if you make a catastrophic choice because it's just, like, blink, blink, and then it's gone.
I enjoyed that as well, and I also liked the theme song "Oh Death." That was pretty interesting. But I guess tying that in now to the gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I said before that this game was kind of like, a Telltale game in the sense of being an interactive drama. How do you think it compares to titles like that?
This one's a little bit different because, like, trying to describe a Telltale game because they're all kind of different in their own, in their own way, but they're all still kind of the same. For this one, it's more catastrophic, I would say, because it's literally life or death instead of just like, oh, I could have been with this guy, but I was with this guy. Like it's like it's not like a flip the pages book where you get to flip to page 93 and this is your outcome. Like this one's more like if you don't project this fall, you're gonna fall and hit your head, and then you're gonna die 2 hours later when you're running from a fucking Wendigo. Like it's completely different. Completely different. So I like how it's like it's very similar to these games, but it's also its own type, kind of like Majora's Mask as we talked about in our season premiere. It's like the other Zelda games, but it's different. Okay, like it's same but different. So for me, that's kind of how I feel. What about you?
Like those kinds of games, I mean, it's obviously it's going to be mostly interactive cutscenes and some third-person exploration. But when I've tried to describe these types of games to people, I like to say it's more just like an interactive movie or an interactive story than it is a video game. And so I think it's a really, really interesting experience for a player. But like you said, though, the main difference here, I think, is the fact that there are just the smallest little choices that you can make that, like the butterfly effect, will have reverberations and echoes on later events that you may have no way of knowing. I mean, early on in the game, there's a bird that you can shoot at, and your instinct is to shoot at it, right? But if you do that, that'll fuck you up later on, and the animals are going to attack you.
Yep.
Because
they fucking yeah.
That's almost like the totems, right? Which, like a lot of the other optional clues and items that can be found during the linear progression, the totems are available to find. And what the totems do is they actually predict future events. But what I found is that they weren't as helpful as you think they would be, because there would be a totem telling you about some kind of event, but not really how to prevent it. It would be something that just happened in some later chapter, and you're like, oh, fuck, well, I mean, it warned me, but I don't know what I was supposed to do to stop it.
Yeah, exactly. You have to, like, read into them so much, and, like, my first playthrough, it was a couple months after it came out, and I definitely went through some guides, like Wiki Guide. Fucking hell, I needed that. Like, my first playthrough, my very first one, I think everybody died.
Okay.
Pretty sure everybody died, so
everybody
I started
can
it
die.
over.
Everybody can die. You can, or everybody can live.
Yeah. Everybody can die, everybody can live, you can lose 1 to 4. Yeah, you can, like, literally lose everybody, or it can just be, like, one thing. I think my second playthrough, Heaton and Rami lived, and then I got almost everybody in my most recent playthrough. But you literally have to, like, consult a guide to be able to get everybody to live. Like, there's no way you can just do it naturally. Sorry, guys. Hate to break it to you.
I did. I tried to mostly do it on my own. Okay. But there were certain points in the story where because I wanted everyone to live, and after I think my first character died, the only character that died for me was Jessica. After that, I was like, well, how can I keep everybody alive? So I try not to spoil myself too much, but I would learn, like, certain things that would happen in certain events to watch out for. But I tried to let myself play the game spoiler-free. There was one other point where I did look up online to see what the outcome of a choice that I had already made would be and how I could possibly recover from that. And that helped me make sure that every character survived, but I did ruin their relationship by doing so. And I'd already fucked up. I had to deal with that. The other time was in the scene where you have to pick between Ashley, or Chris has to pick between Ashley and Josh. in the buzzsaw scene, I was like, wait a second. I thought everybody could live. So I did have to look up just to make sure, and I
Yeah.
thankfully came across something that didn't spoil that moment for me, because it's a really, really crazy moment later on when you realize that, that was fake and Josh was behind everything. But I'm glad that I did at least find out that the choice that you make would not have an impact later on the story.
Thank God. Yeah, that would have fucked me up. Because I remember my first playthrough, I think I picked him. And my second playthrough, I picked Ashley.
I think
And then
it
my
picks
last
him no
playthrough, I
matter
picked
what.
Ashley. Huh?
I think it picks him no matter what. But it doesn't matter because he doesn't actually die. So
Yeah, fuck him.
fuck Josh. That's another interesting part of the story, and I guess we'll get into that in a second. But another aspect of the game, besides the butterfly effect system, besides the various totems and clues and secrets, which, by the way, can be carried across multiple playthroughs, but we also have quick time event sequences, and that's something that you normally see in this type of a game. And some people criticize quick time event sequence, but I like QTEs.
Yeah. Piggybacking off of what you said, that's the reason how I found out not to kill everybody. Because, like, I honestly, I think I accidentally skipped the tutorial in my first playthrough.
Okay.
So I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. So I was literally just winging it, and I wanted to get through the game so I could, like, play over. Because, like it's like we said, like, you can't just go back. Like, you have to just continue playing the game. And I literally was, like, so fucking confused, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I left the game down for a few months, and then I picked it back up even more confused. So I just sent it through the game and made sure to kill everybody. My second playthrough, I fucked up, and I quit the game. So I literally had just, like, I was playing as Rami and Heaton, so I considered them saved because I was, like, switching back between the two. And then my last one, I think only one person died, but I can't remember who died. And it was at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
So you can redeem yourself, but that's because I got those hints when I catastrophically fucked up, because I was literally just running around like a madman picking up shit. So because that shit carries over, you can actually redeem yourself in a later playthrough. I am so sorry to all of these characters. I fucking killed you all.
I killed Jessica, and after that I was determined to keep everybody. And what's crazy is everybody who's living can die at the end in the final chapter.
Yeah.
Because there's one of those QuickTime event sequences that I was mentioning, and throughout the game there are QTEs that will fuck up. In fact, that's how Jessica died. Jessica died because I failed a QTE. And so it's not like one QTE will fuck you up, but if you make the wrong choices and you mess up too many, then it will be the death of a character. So you have to be careful with those. Oftentimes,
and these aren't just traditional ones either. These are, like, in your face. Like, these are quick ones. Like, they're not like, like old school God of War where it's like you hold it. Like, these are like, you better smash that button like you're fucking, I don't even want to talk, it's dirty language, but you know what I mean here.
there's a risk and reward system, because in a lot of cases you have to decide, okay, am I going to pick the safe route or am I going to pick the quick route? And the game presents you with that multiple times. And so if you pick the quick route, you better be up on those QTEs.
Yeah.
If you decide to play it safe, the QTEs are going to be a lot easier, but you may not get to the objective in time. And in this case, I think the situation was Mike has to get to Jessica by picking every safe route and not messing up too many QTEs. Or I think maybe there's one in particular that fucks it up, and I happen to pick that one. That's the one I happen to fuck up on. They're not too hard, but you really have to be attentive. But the hardest ones for me, and the one I was alluding to earlier in the final chapter, are the don't move segments. Because you never know when they're coming, and they're easy because if you think about it, all you have to do is just set your controller down on the table. I'm sorry, that's the way I do it, because it is way too freaking hard to keep it still. But you have to know that it's coming.
Especially when you're in a horror sequence.
Yeah, especially, and it's so tense, and you feel the tenseness of the character having to remain completely still. So I put it down on the table, but the problem is that you have to know that those events are coming up and prepare yourself for. So there would be times where I could feel that those don't move sequences were about to happen. So I'd go ahead, I just put the controller on the table, and I'd be trying to push the buttons from the table because I didn't want to kill a character off.
Yeah, those are fucking hard. That's probably one of the hardest things in this game is the don't move sequence. Yes. Oh my god.
But, with those and with the butterfly effect, I mean, it really just it really increases the sense of urgency. And like I said before, you feel the weight of all your decisions or, mistakes.
There's so many mistakes that you can make, guys. Like when I intentionally fucked it up, like you really fuck up. Like you don't realize you can really fuck up.
Yeah.
Like bad. Like I was like, "Oh my god. I'm a terrible human being."
No, you really do. And they shove it in your face later on. Like, here's the characters that died, and then the characters react to each other based on people that died. And so, like, you're in complete control of these characters' lives. And I like those little moments throughout the story where you meet the Dr. AJ Hill. Oh God, that performance is so good. But he talks to you, almost breaking the fourth wall, saying, while you're playing your game and while you're toying with these people's lives, but in reality, he's talking to Josh, who's having delusions.
Yes, but it does feel like that breaking the fourth wall kind of thing. I will agree with you on that. It's like, and you're sitting there like with this sense of dread, like stop fucking talking to me like this. This is scaring the fuck out of me.
And that performance is done masterfully by Peter Stormare. And God,
yes.
Oh, he's just the right amount of like creepy and and I've seen him in some other shit before. I mean, that dude's everywhere.
Yeah, it's like Alexander Skarsgård with fucking it. He just has to look, and he's like creepy.
It's just that presence, right?
Yes, he's just fucking creepy. Sorry, dude, but you're creepy.
He is creepy.
Imagine a night.
This was the right thing to do.
Where every decision.
What the hell was that?
And every single action.
I just saw someone at the cabin.
Affects your fate.
Very funny. Guys, come on.
And the fate of those around you.
Oh my god, what the hell was that? We need to go get help now.
Could you live with the consequences? Until dawn, only your choices determine who will survive. Exclusively on PS4.
What were your thoughts on the story and especially, how that story is influenced by the player choice?
I'd have to say because of player choice, you feel like you have more control, but really, like, do you? You know what I mean?
Do you?
But do you? Like, really? I definitely felt like, like I was playing God over these fictional characters, and I really fucking hated it, and like also fuck Josh because like you don't even realize, like you're
Fuck
like
Josh.
like halfway through the game before you realize that Josh is the one doing all of this.
Yeah, just about. That's the turning point. And what's funny is a lot of the moments in the game that you think are like, someone hunting you or whatever, it's just Josh fucking around with everyone. And then, then the supernatural shit really kicks in and you're like, oh, okay, there's really something going on here.
Yeah.
But I gotta agree with you. I mean, I kind of wish that player choice really did have more of an influence. Like, I'm literally looking for that game where the story is just completely different. Like, what if you made a game where like the entire outcome was different, like kind of like what Black Mirror Bandersnatch did, where the reality of events is different. Like, the killer could be different depending on what choices you make or things like that. But in this game, all of the choices are headed in the same direction. It's just what events happen on the way to getting there and who's going to be alive to tell the tale at the end,
Yeah, absolutely.
But and I really think that beyond the player choice, the game itself did manage to really capture the essence of a horror slasher film as it intended. Because I mean, you've got all these young adults / teenagers cooped up in an isolated area on a mountaintop, and you've got a killer going after them, or in this case, killers, and a fake killer.
Yeah.
But you've really got those vibes going on. It straight up feels like it, and there's got to be the elements of adulterous sex and.
Oh God, it's not a horror film if they're not fucking. Just saying.
it's not a horror slasher film unless there's extramarital sex or premarital sex, and I don't know why it is, but serial killers are like they're like lured to that. They've like a sense like Mike Myers and or not Mike Myers, not Shrek, Michael Myers and Jason and Freddy are all like it's like they could smell it, right?
They're like, oh, they fucking.
There's teens having sex.
Oh,
Anyway,
she gonna be pregnant by next week. We better just take care of it now, guys. Let's just be done with it. That boy don't know how to wrap it before he taps it.
some of the choices are actually in regards to things like that. Like, you know, you could play as Mike, who's kind of the womanizer type character, and you can be like, you know, you can get it on if you make the right choices, and that's kind of a sense of player satisfaction. Like, okay, I managed to get there, you know, even though Jessica ended up dying, at least we were on good terms before it happened.
She may have died, but at least I got to tap it.
At least you got to tap it. Well, or almost. So you said that your first playthrough, everybody died, right?
I intentionally killed everybody because I knew that I catastrophically fucked up.
Okay. What do you think was the worst decision that you made on that initial playthrough before you knew what the fuck was going on?
You mean besides not doing the walkthrough?
Like in game, you know?
I feel like because I keep talking about it, probably my biggest one, because it's one that you don't realize, is what's his face falling and hitting his head.
Okay.
Because that one can really fuck him up, and it'll kill him, especially in the end sequence, because he's starting to bleed out, and you don't even realize it until he's covered, because by the end he's covered in blood, and you're like, oh my god, he's gonna die before we even get out of here. Like, I feel like that was one of my bigger fuck-ups. What about you?
For me, it was more so just mishandling that one QTE with Mike.
The QTEs, yeah.
And then I did fuck up the relationship between Emily and Matt, but fuck Emily, she's a bitch. I don't care. And I was just like, you know, just be happy that you both are alive, okay?
Exactly.
But I felt bad
agree 1000%.
I felt like Matt was a good guy, and I made him do a not good thing to save his life.
Yeah. It was just, I don't know, because, like, all of the characters are so, like, completely different that I wouldn't even... I don't know, I don't feel like I hated anybody besides Josh. Like, initially, I hated Josh because he was a fucking dickhead. And I was like, you're pompous. Like, why are you acting this way? Like, you need to chill the fuck out, dude.
There's no one
What's
that I
your deal?
necessarily... Well, there's nobody that I wanted to kill off because I hated them so bad.
Oh, I didn't want to kill anybody off, obviously. Like, I wanted them all to live, but I was like, Josh, you're a dick.
I probably would have let Josh die, but I decided to let him live, and I was nearing the end of the game, so I went ahead and saw and looked up something and found out that there was something that you had to get in order to make sure that Josh lives, which ultimately actually ends up in a worse outcome, I think, because he ends up becoming a Wendigo if you let him live. But I did it anyway, which I probably would have. And sometimes, even if I looked ahead and I knew what choice would be the better one, which wasn't often, I tried to play this game, you know, purely, I still would go with the choice that I would make, you know, because I didn't want, you know.
I feel like Sam was my personal favorite, though, because she's such a badass warrior bitch.
Yeah.
Like, yes, honey, you go. She's like, guys, we need to get the fuck out. And, of course, like, Jessica and Mike are like, no, we won't go fuck, bro. And they're like, no, we need to get the fuck out of here. You can fuck later.
Sam was actually a real hitter. Like, she was an awesome character. And also, there's that one scene where she's in the bath, and you're like, hey.
Yeah. Yeah, she's pretty hot. Not gonna lie.
It's really hot. And I think I had kind of a crush on Hayden Panettiere ever since Heroes, so, you know.
And then also, you know what? I feel like, because I hadn't picked up the game in a while, like, we had played a little bit, but I'm pretty sure Brett Dalton is in this.
Yes,
You probably will not, I don't know if you'll know who that is. Brett Dalton plays, yes, he plays Mike. So he is Ward in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Very, very big character in that one. And this was around the same time frame, so I believe he was still shooting Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. when he was mocapping for this, if I remember correctly from his Instagram page, because I was following him at the time.
I'm glad you brought up Mike, too, because that's another character I wanted to mention is I did not like him at first. I thought this guy's a sleazebag. He's a womanizer. I don't like him. But over time, like I actually really he got a redemption arc, and he really
He did.
became one of the more like likable characters in the story. And at the end, he's the one that figures what's going on, and he and Sam characters are the ones that ultimately enact the plan. And that is just such a cool moment at the end, by the way, because he comes up with the plan, she looks at, she instantly figures out, and then there's like 3 different don't move sequences in a row, and you feel like a badass every time you pull one off, and you're like, and then another character leaves, and then go, and then another character leaves, and that's the moment I'm talking about, where every character can die, even if they've lived up to this point. But if you do it right, she's going to do the dual move sequence, allowing each character to walk out the door, and then they both leave, and then he blows up the house.
Yes. So that's a pretty iconic one, and I couldn't, because like it's like I said, I played a couple weeks ago, but like it didn't click in my head because I hadn't been watching Shield recently. Alan and I have been kind of waiting because I don't know about you, Ash, but all of my favorite fucking TV shows are ending this year, and I'm really, really upset about it. So like both Alan and I, before we even started dating, before we got married or anything, 2 of our big ones was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the 100. And then another big one for me is Supernatural. All 3 of them are ending this year.
Damn.
So I've been waiting to watch the 7th season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and I've been waiting to, like, when a series ends for me, I will watch it from beginning to end, and I will binge it to make sure that everything clicks together for a series finale for me. That's just always how I've done it. The only thing that I haven't done that with is Criminal Minds, because it's like, what, 18 seasons? Like, I can't... I have some other shows to watch. SWAT is coming out with a new episode, or, yeah, new season opening next week, so I'm gonna be watching that. But, like, for me, I have to, like, watch it all the way through, so I, like, haven't watched it yet. I totally would have clicked it if it was Brett Dalton, but he has a big character arc piggybacking on you. He was one of the characters that I was like, you know, he seems like it reminded me of what movie is that, where it's, they're like, set off the pheromones, and they're making them hook up in the woods, and it's Chris Hemsworth. Cabin in the Woods?
Cabin in the Woods. I've heard of it, and I have my aunt keeps wanting me to watch that movie and maybe talk about it on the podcast, and I haven't yet, but I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Cabin in the Woods. That one's like weird but funny once you get to the end, but he kind of reminded me of Chris Hemsworth in that one before, you know, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah.
Okay.
They all get fucked up.
Okay, that's interesting. I really need to watch that. But yeah, I thought the motion capture performances in this were fantastic, and the characters were well acted. They acted. I mean, they were realistic. They acted like young adults would act. You know.
Yeah, even though Brett Dalton is in his 30s, I think. Like, he acted pretty well for being a teenager, yeah. And he's from, you know, I don't know if you've seen it, Ash. I personally am a big Marvel junkie myself. Like, I will literally watch anything related to Marvel, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is no exception. One of my favorite shows of all time.
I haven't watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I've wanted to, but I kind of been I would have earlier, but now that I'm figuring out that because originally it was canon to the MCU, and now it's not, so it's kind of disappointing me and pushing me away from wanting to watch it. But at some point I will.
It's actually funny that you mention that, because it does, even up into season, let's see, I just finished.
It's up until, I think, season 6 or whatever, and then the newest one, they just completely ignore the snap, because, and I get why they had to do it, but I'm just kind of like, because it's one of those series that I haven't watched, but like I've kind of kept up with like what's been going on in it, and I heard about that, and I was kind of like, well, that's kind of disappointing. I don't know if I want to watch it now, because that's not actually a part of the events at this point. And did they ever explain that?
Season 7, yeah, they do kind of, because it's like they kind of get into like alternate realities and shit like that.
Okay.
So like seasons 1 through 6, you actually hear them mentioning, you know, like after Coulson dies, like they mention like the Tahiti moment. You know, they mention, you know, Avengers moments. They are cleaning up during the Shatari attacks, like they're cleaning up all the wreckages and having to take care and, you know, do protection details on alien artifacts and things like that. So it is actually pretty canon up until season 7. From what I understand, I think it's like different realities, or it's like time travel or something, so they're not present during the snap.
Okay, so it's like, you know, you're left to fill in the blanks that basically because of time travel shenanigans, they've shifted into an alternate reality where that didn't happen.
I believe so, or it's like they're in a parallel where it hasn't existed yet, or maybe they're at a point in time. I don't think it's current with where they were at in Avengers when they filmed
Okay.
it, because they were cutting the series short. Like, the series ended before, like, they had already wrapped, I believe, right as Endgame was coming out.
Yeah, because
So
it
it
was
wasn't
season 6, I
tying.
think, was coming up with Infinity War. And they were
Yeah,
tying it in and mentioning events, and then it's like, so Thanos was coming and all that, and then all of a sudden, they jump forward a year later and the snap never happened, and I was like, oh, well, okay.
I'm just saying, if they actually let everybody in, Agent May would whoop everybody's ass, and she would be along with all of the females that saved Tom Holland's little cute Spider-Man ass. Daisy would have absolutely just quaked everybody apart. Like, there would be no competition between Thanos and Quake. Just saying. Robbie Reyes, fucking Ghost Rider, hells yeah, why was he not brought in? Him and Tony Stark would have been best fucking friends. There's so, yeah, like, I could fangirl. We are completely on a tangent. I am so sorry. I love that
good.
show.
That's what I'm here
Brett
for.
Dalton as Ward, of course, in that is a fantastic actor. He makes you fall in love with him just for him to snap your heart into 10,000 little pieces, and you have to pick it up slowly as each season goes along. And just for them to do it again in an alternate reality, just so you know. And break your heart again. Is this something we do now?
This is something we do now. We have to go on tangents.
No, he literally, he wakes up and he's like, hey, babe. And he goes, is this something we do now? And he just sticks his arm out at her because she was sticking his arm at him.
My wife texted me. It's a long text that I really should deserves a good response. So I'm going to tell her I'm going to respond to that in a second.
Smart move. As a wife, I can definitely recommend just being like, hey, busy for a couple seconds. I will actually respond in a minute, and it won't be half-assed.
Okay. Anyway, some more tangents. But yeah, no, the quality of the motion performances were awesome, and I felt like the graphics were really good too, right?
Yeah, for a game of this kind of feel and aesthetic, it was actually a pretty game. As you know, guys, I'm sure everybody knows I'm a graphics junkie. I love my graphics a little bit too much. This game was actually really pretty aesthetically pleasing, especially, considering where it was based, which was up on top of, what is it? Is it Blackwood Mountain?
Blackwood Mountain, yeah. I like the particle effects that they implemented. I know that there was like volumetric lighting that was used. Yeah, especially with the snow and everything. It just has just such a creepy atmosphere, and just overall the graphics are really, really impressive. I'm glad that this game came out on PS4 and that they waited to do that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Especially because, like, PS3 was a great console, but there's only so much that it can do, especially, as we're coming into the season of the new consoles. You have to keep up with the graphics that are coming out, not just with TVs, but with, technology. And, I don't think this game could have been executed any other way, because, even though we're not quite there yet, some games you can literally turn your head and you can see the pores on their faces. And
Yeah.
it's intense.
It is intense. And overall, I think the presentation and the execution were done well. There's no glaring bugs or glitches, and maybe because we have such a linear story here, and you're in these self-contained environments, you can't push the limits of that. So, but overall, I mean, this game executes well exactly what it aims to do, and so you've got to give it props for that. I believe that this game did actually get good positive reception generally. At least according to Metacritic. The aspects of this game that were most praised was the butterfly effect system, and even like we said earlier, the aspect of having to force players to live with their choices actually is what makes the game. That strict autosave system is actually what and it was used to good effect. It did what it was trying to do, and the performances were also met with acclaim as well. Like we were agreeing,
Yeah, they were definitely very worthy performances, especially for people who, like, Hayden Panettiere has been in her fair share of things, but I feel like she did an amazing job being able to capture, being in a horror sequence, especially for someone who doesn't seem, like the type to be in one, even though she's, kind of perceived as like the blonde.
She's perfect for a horror movie. She's definitely a final girl, like right there. That is a final girl if I've ever seen one.
I mean, yeah, true. Also, I mean, just a lot of even how they can, like, maintain relationships. I mean, you can see it in a game when it's Final Cut, but you got to realize, like, whenever they're developing a game, like, you have to literally just sit there and stare at a mocap screen.
Yeah.
And sit there and read a line off of a page. So the fact that they were able to tie all this together and actually make it seem like they were dynamic towards each other was actually a very, very good performance for me personally. I'm very, very intrigued by, like, voice cap and things like that. I just am so fascinated by voice acting. Like, I thought I would be able to do it because I can do some pretty good impressions. So I feel like I wouldn't be too bad at it. But, like, it's interesting how it all comes together and, like, watching it.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And then even the QTEs, which most people will criticize, and obviously we have our fair share of critics. Just the fact that they use QTEs in the first place, which I've never gotten. I've always liked them. I've always felt like they're really satisfying and cool, and they make what would normally be a boring cutscene cooler. But even the
absolutely.
haters, a lot of people would say that the QTEs are used well here because this is the type of game that you need QuickTime events in.
Yeah, it really is. I feel like the game wouldn't be the same if you didn't have the QuickTime events because it's not gonna have the sense of urgency that you're looking for if you don't have this type of event, which is it's kind of integral to the game itself. Like you wouldn't have the same experience without it.
Yeah, there has been some criticism aimed at the implementation of the motion controls. A lot of people felt that was kind of gimmicky. I didn't use the motion controls. I used the traditional controls, which does use some motion, and I felt like it was a good balance.
Yeah.
So I think originally when the game came out, it was motion control only, and I think that they ended up patching that, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong.
They did, yeah.
At least the game was originally envisioned as motion only when it was a PS Move title. So, but I thought the motion controls, whenever you do the traditional controls, were actually pretty tolerable, and I didn't have a huge issue with it. As far as sales goes, I mean, I've heard that the game actually did end up surpassing the company expectations, either by Supermassive's expectations or probably Sony's. And in fact, it was not only a best-selling game, but a top trending game on YouTube in August 2015, and it was the second best-selling retail game in the UK on its release week, just right behind Gears of War Ultimate Edition.
It was the Ultimate Edition. Was that the, like, 2015? What year was that one?
I'm assuming that would be 2015, yeah. That's when the game came out.
Well, I know, I think it might have been when they released the first game. They, like, kind of, not like a...
yeah, it's Ultimate Edition.
Remaster, but like an Ultimate Edition kind of thing, yeah.
That's what it was. It was the Ultimate Edition. This game did win one award, the British Academy Games Awards. In 2016, it won Original Property, and it was nominated for several others, including Golden Joystick, the Game Awards, South by Southwest, National Academy of Video Game Trade Reviews, and other British Academy Awards it was nominated for. So, and I felt like it honestly is deserved. This game broke a lot of boundaries. Is it, a perfect game or like an absolute masterpiece, mind-blowing, something that's never been done before? No, but it has a lot of new interesting concepts. It's executed well,
Absolutely, yeah. This game was especially, for something that I guess that I feel like this is the way that a lot of big games are. They weren't expecting it, and it just slaps. And it really did. This game was a pretty big slap for me, even though I really made myself catastrophically fuck up in my first playthrough because I felt like it was needed.
Yeah, I mean, and it did well enough to warrant its own spinoff and prequel. There's a VR arcade shooter called Until Dawn: Rush of Blood. I don't know what it has to do with this at all. I guess it just exists in the same universe. It's not canonical to the storyline, but that's available on PlayStation VR. Came out in 2016, and actually, there's also a prequel, full-blown prequel, which I'm also struggling to find out exactly how it really connects to Until Dawn, but because it's a first-person survival horror game with not as many interactive elements. But there is the idea of player choices determining the outcome of the story, and it's set 60 years before the original. That's called The Inpatient.
Yeah.
And that's on PS4 and PSVR.
Which actually I find really interesting because I wouldn't have even thought that was something that would have been out there, but that's kind of cool.
Yeah, came out just a couple years ago in 2018. I'd never heard of it, but
yeah.
But I guess we'll sort of wrap it up from here. What are your final thoughts on this, Megan?
Final thoughts on this game. This is definitely a worthy game if you're wanting to like tiptoe your way into the horror game kind of style. Of course, you're gonna have your butterfly choices, so be careful about what you do. I feel like if this is something that you're wanting to see what's out there, but not exactly shit your pants your first playthrough, it's a good pick. It's not too completely like in your face, like I'm gonna fucking stab you with the rotted half broken off fucking scissor blade like in some horror games. Outlast talking to you. But I feel like this is a pretty good like starter horror game. It's definitely interesting in its own style. If you like any of the people mentioned above, everybody loves Rami Malek because he did such a good job, impersonating Freddie Mercury. So I mean that's a good reason to check it out. The man's a great, glorious, beautiful man. Hayden Panettiere is just, she's hot. Everybody can say that. She's gorgeous, beautiful, stunning woman. Definitely has really, really good mocap if you're wanting to do something that's, sort of out there. I think coming down to it, it's worth the pickup, especially because it's not too expensive now. It's what, a couple bucks. If not nothing else, it's you're just your little bit of a chip in for your PS Now. So
yeah,
fuck
definitely.
it, try it, do it. Especially if you're missing spoopy season, this is a good way to get back into spoopy season.
I agree, and like I think I agree with what you said as well. Is it's a good entry level horror game because there's not as much focus on the horror. It just kind of has those elements that make it feel like a horror slasher film, especially from like the 80s. But there are there's plenty of tenseness and terror throughout. There's a good share of jump scares. I forgot to mention earlier, it's the baby Wolverine scene. I don't know why.
Oh,
but for some reason
yeah.
that scared the fuck out of me when it happened, and it plays off so well because as soon as the you see it on screen, you're like, oh well, that's nothing. I shouldn't have been scared of that. So I think that's why it pays off for me. But that was the one that got me. I love the sense of urgency. I love being stuck in situations where you have to, there's another situation with Chris and Ashley where he's got to either shoot her or shoot him in order to stop a blade coming through, and I couldn't do either one. I just kind of let it go, and it ended up okay for the characters.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that sequence. Yeah, I picked it up a little bit, but I just played through the beginning just to get kind of a sense of feel for like the engine of the game and like the play style. So I just totally I hadn't played it in a while, I won't lie to you guys. I kind of did like a little bit of a recap for myself, but like I'd like those iconic moments like that, like I kind of have forgotten over time.
But I really think the game picks up later on. Kind of midway through is where it really picks up when you start playing as soon as I think when Jessica died and Mike is like in the sanatorium, and I think I played the rest of the game from that point all the way to the end in one sitting, whereas it had taken me like several weeks to get up to that. So once you get into the game, I will say like it really picks up, and you really just, like I said, you feel the urgency, you feel the weight. It's an awesome game to pick up. It doesn't even have to be spooky season. I mean, you can play it any time, and I think it really fits the tone, and I think it's a neat concept. I'd like to see a game like this really extrapolate more and have like I said, more choices of outcome, and maybe the story could be just completely different depending on your choices. But I do like what is available here, and it does feel like you do get to have some, like I say, you can have all the characters live or none of them live, So, and there's even a little bit of sense of, what, I really hate this character, let them die. Emily, Josh.
I wanted Josh to die so many times, but I feel like I just sent him to the wolves anyways.
But yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think it's great. I love it. I had a ton of fun with it. I would definitely pick it up again, and I kind of did. I like how at the end of the game you can go through and you can go back to one chapter, but you have to pick up everywhere from that chapter. But you can go back and then you can reload from a certain point. So if you're like, I don't want to get through all the intro again, I just want to get back to this part where I made this decision, you can do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But it is great. It is a thrilling experience. You can get through it in one night. You can play it until dawn.
Oh my god, you had to. You just had to.
Which, by the way, we also forgot to mention that the entire game takes place in one night. And so every chapter it's telling you how many hours are until dawn.
Another thing also that we've totally forgot to mention is they're literally coming up to this cabin to like something, I don't remember exactly what happened, but something catastrophic happened 1 year exactly before.
It's the anniversary of their friend's deaths. Yeah.
Their friend died, and literally all of them fucking die if you end up fucking up bad enough, guys.
Yeah.
So just warning you, it's pretty fucking depressing.
That's the prologue segment too. Like the original plot of the game, like there are a couple characters that die in the beginning. You can't save them. They do die. Hannah and Beth die no matter what you do, but it introduces you to the concepts of the game. It's a tutorial segment that shows you like, here's some choices that you can make, but you can make them safely because they don't actually have any outcome on anything. But so that was actually pretty cool. But I love the layer of storytelling. I can't say it enough that I love these types of games. I love, also the Telltale games. And I think that Until Dawn is like you said, I think is definitely worth a pickup. It's on PlayStation Now. If you're subscribed to that service, you can check it out.
Yep.
But hope everyone had a happy Halloween. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us some feedback. You can give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Go check us out on Podchaser, which is kind of the social network for podcasters. Speaking of social media, we are also on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you like Collateral Gaming and you like horror slasher movies like how this game is presented, you'll also love my other podcast, Collateral Cinema, which I'm on with Bo and Robert. That's a lot of fun. We just got out our Halloween episode on Night of the Living Dead, the original, and by the time this comes out, we should be pretty, if it's not already out, we'll have our episode on Spider-Man 3 out, which I took the lead on. That was one of my picks. Next time on Collateral Gaming, we're going to be talking about The Last of Us Part 2.
Guys, I haven't started playing yet, and I'm already scared because like the first game made me cry like a little bit. So just keep some tissues apart for me and just leave us some good reviews so I have something to smile about. At me on Instagram and send me some memes. Send me some shit on Facebook and Twitter so I don't cry my eyes out, please. Just send me some fire memes, please.
Yeah. That is a controversial game. I think it honestly could have been Game of the Year if it wasn't so divisive. So that'll be interesting to talk about and see. Spoiler, I like it. I think it's great so far, but I haven't beat it yet. So we'll see how I feel by the end. And I've heard that's the part that a lot of people are mad about. But Zach liked it. So, and Megan, we'll see how she feels. We'll see how Alan feels as well.
Yeah, Alan will actually be on this episode, guys. So we'll finally be coming on together for season 3. So that'll be fun.
Hell
My
yeah.
husband's like, I haven't played that one. Didn't play that as a kid. I'm like, okay, well, I guess we'll see you at some point on the podcast. Thanks.
But stay safe, guys. You can find Collateral Gaming wherever you get your podcasts at. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, etc. And if there's anywhere we're not on, let me know, so I'll put us on.
Yeah, please, absolutely, let us know.
We are excited about the rest of this season. We are just starting out season 3 of Collateral Gaming, and we have a lot of really cool games to talk to you guys about. So
we have lots of content coming. Keep it hype for us. We're trying to keep y'all good and give y'all some more shit to listen to and hang out and watch us do.
Hell yeah. In addition, next month, I also wanted to mention we are also going to be doing a couple game launch episodes. We're going to be talking about Spider-Man Miles Morales and Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. So stay tuned for those as well.
Y'all, if this podcast episode gets enough likes, Alan will buy me a Switch.
There you go. I'm
putting it into existence.
Download this podcast, and if we get enough likes and downloads, then
get a sad Megan a Switch.
At some point, my plan was when we get enough downloads, we should all get a tattoo.
Ooh.
Collateral Gaming.
How many? I'm itching.
Well, on Collateral Cinema, I think we pushed it up to 5,000 or 10,000. No, we're already past 5,000. We're pushing it up to 10,000 on Collateral Cinema. So I guess we got to hold ourselves by the same standards. 10,000 downloads, and we'll all get tattoos. Well, I guess I can't tell.
Just don't
everybody
make me
else
put
to.
something on my ass cheek.
Probably not. Probably just like a game controller wherever you want. Link us together.
There you go.
But we rambled on long enough. Stay tuned for that episode on The Last of Us Part 2. Stay tuned for our game launch episodes. We're also coming up on our in December. We'll be doing our anniversary special and our holiday special. I won't reveal those yet. We'll as we get a little bit closer, we'll talk about that. But yeah, guys, please stay tuned for some great content. We are really excited to be doing this, and we can't thank our listeners and fellow podcasters enough.
Absolutely. We love you guys a lot.
Alrighty. Well, happy belated Halloween, everyone. We hope you stay safe. And also, I know election just happened, so especially stay safe. And other than that, I'm Ashley Chancellor.
And I'm Megan Gomez, and we are out.
We are out. Collateral Gaming is an L Company production. All music and game clips are owned by their respective creators and are used for educational purposes only. Please don't sue us. We're poor.
Everything you do, every decision you make from now on will open doors to the future. I want you to remember this. I want you to remember this as you play your game.